Well, believe it or not, the weather conditions in the UK this year have been very testing for us photographers because there's been wall-to-wall sunshine. Now, normally you'll hear me complaining about the weather. That's what we do in the UK, we complain about the weather all the time. But this time the weather is actually too good for photography, and by that I mean it's gin clear skies, no clouds, it's very, very bright directional sunlight. It's very, very difficult for somebody who does landscape photography to make much interesting of these conditions. So you have to think before you go out to make the best of it. Otherwise you're going to come back with some very bland and uninteresting shots. So it was with this in mind that when I set out on a recent trip into the mountains, a rather snowy trip as it turned out on the tops, I thought to myself, I need a camera here which can handle pretty much every situation, and I don't want to be carrying multiple bodies. Now, for me, that means just one thing. I have a camera which is a full spectrum camera. That's one which has had the basic layers over the sensor removed, so it sees all the spectrum of light, all the ultraviolets right up into the infrared. I'll show you the camera here. It's only a very simple Lumix G5 from about 2012, 16 megapixel, micro four thirds. Now, as it stands, the camera will shoot natively with the full spectrum, and you get rather weird colours. I've done a video on this in the past, and that's not to everyone's taste. It's a bit strange. So I typically will kit it out with a little infrared filter here. Now, this infrared filter gives very dramatic effects. It basically turns this camera into an infrared camera, but you have to have the filter over each lens, so you need a lens which takes your filters, etc. So you need filters which fit each lens. Can be a bit of a faff, but there's one huge advantage to carrying a camera like this over just a pure infrared camera, and that's because you can deploy something called a UV IR cut filter. Now I'm going to try and get the angle on the light. If I can't, I'll do you a close-up, but this filter essentially blocks all the ultraviolet and all the infrared light. Now the idea is that this essentially replicates what a normal sensor would be like on a digital camera, in that you can't see into the infrared and you can't see down into the ultraviolet. So in theory, at least, this little filter turns my camera back into a standard digital camera. So I will see colours normally. I can shoot landscapes in full colour. I don't get any of those weird colour shifts that I get with the unmasked sensor, if you like, when I haven't got any filters on there. So I've got two filters. I've got infrared when I want to shoot the dramatic black and white, and I've got the UV IR cut filter when I want to shoot traditional colour. So in theory, as I said, I've got the best of both worlds. Now, you have to have a lens, obviously, which will take the various filters. So this is a very simple micro four thirds 12 to 60 Panasonic lens, and I usually screw the infrared filter directly in here. Now, the thing is, when you are shooting with a camera like this, it pays to consider each shot very carefully, because you can soon get carried away. It can become quite gimmicky to shoot infrared, and I know a lot of people found this when you start shooting infrared. You shoot everything in infrared and everything looks amazing on the LCD, and you get it back and it's not so good because you're bowled over with that glowing foliage and that dark sky effect. It's super dramatic. But on this trip, and it's playing away in the background as you can see, I was determined to get a mixture of shots. Now, early on in the day, I was shooting with the UV IR cut filter to get those colour images. I wanted colour shots, and that's what I got. Now, you will notice on a lot of the colour shots, if you shoot at a wide angle, there is a real fringing, and that fringing is typically green and it's not very pleasant. Now, you can play it down in Lightroom or Photoshop, but it's still there. It's quite hard to remove completely because it's just at the extremities of the frame. That said, I actually think some of the colours it gives with this filter, even though they're slightly off, they are actually very nice for the landscapes I was shooting. I don't mind them at all. They're reminiscent of I've said it before, reminiscent of a sort of film look, especially when you're shooting micro four thirds. So as I went through the day, I was chopping and changing between colour and black and white infrared on the same camera. And this made it much easier. I just had the camera sat on a little Peak Designs clip. I didn't need to worry about reaching into the bag for a different camera body. I could leave the same lens on all day. Midday through to sort of early afternoon, infrared worked much better. the much stronger images here came from infrared. But towards the end, there was a couple where I decided to go back to the colour. You know, I didn't have to think, will it be just a black and white day or just a colour day? I had the best of both worlds. Now, you could obviously carry a small infrared camera alongside a traditional digital camera, but I just wanted to prove a point, I think, to myself that I could shoot with the one camera, the one lens, and it keeps things very light and simple when you're up in the hills. But I would say that there are drawbacks. Obviously, this little thing, as you've seen, gives some strange colour shifts. So it's used with care and it's not going to suit every scene. It's certainly not going to suit those super high quality, realistic colour scenes. But for a 13-year-old camera with a kit lens, it's remarkable just how good a range of images you can get on these bright sunny days. Now, we continue to be plagued by good weather at the moment in Britain and it's driving me nuts. So I've got another trip coming up, but I'm wondering what to take with me. Now, I'm not going to take the digital camera. It's going to be film this time, but I want that same sort of flexibility. You know, is it going to be colour? Is it going to be black and white? So I'm having to think carefully about what I take out with me again until we get back to our normal British weather, which will be rain, cloud, and blowing a gale. Fantastic. Just can't wait for it to come back. But until then, I'm going to have to use my head, think a little bit more, and come back hopefully with shots which I wouldn't have got if I'd just gone out with the same old kit. So thanks for watching as ever, and I'll see you again on the next one.